Hi and welcome back. Sorry for the long gap from the first lesson to this one. It has just been so crazy, my poor schedule between teaching and social events and graduations and picnics and yard work. It's just been impossible to get into the studio to work on this for any length of time. But I have done part of the largest flower here in the lower right corner of the piece, trying to work through how was I going to create the petals and all of that in here. And I'm using a variety of colors. It doesn't mean you have to. I mean, what I would recommend, I'll tell you what I'm using. It doesn't mean that's what you have to use. You need to look at what paint you have and see if you can find a color that is pink but leans more to the blue, pink and leans more towards orangey color, pink that leans towards purple, a darker kind of reddish color, because there's all kinds of tones and colors in this flower. In general, the sun is coming from the upper left, and pretty much the right and lower side of this whole bloom is more in shadow than it is light struck. The more light struck side is right in here. And what I'm doing is using my Kindle. I have the photograph of this flower right here on my Kindle, and I can blow it up and really study the color that's there and try my best to make it look that way. So the colors, and this is several layers of color. It isn't all just one time. I'm trying to build the color as I go, and after the layer dries, if it's not dark enough or it's not pink enough or red enough, whatever, I go on top of it with something else. But the colors that I'm using here are Daniel Smith Quinacridone Rose, Quinacridone Pink, Quinacridone Coral, and Rose Madder Genuine. I'm also using Mission Rose Madder and Winsor Newton Permanent Magenta. That's for all the pinky red color. For the shadows, the grays, and there are warmer grays and there's cooler grays. You have to study your photo to see what it looks like. And again, this is also layered to build color. I'm using Daniel Smith Cobalt Blue. Oh, let me get this color. Quinacridone Orange. That would be Daniel Smith also. And that helps to make a gray. Now, if I want it to be bluer, I can pull in some French ultramarine or put more cobalt into it. If I want it more purple, I pull a little bit of my purpley color over into the mix. So I can adjust it that way. But it's a matter of studying your photo and just trying to get the tones and the temperatures and the values correct. So it is a slow process. It's not something that you can just whip out unless you paint really fast. But even then, it's a little bit of a challenge. So I thought I would show you a petal. Okay. This petal right here, this corner is right into the sun and is almost bleach white. So I'm going to leave that white just like it is right now. this petal here, these little points sticking out are also in the sun and very, very, very light. But this part here is a lighter pink. So I need to get some lighter pink color in that area. So, and I'm working on dry paper. I'm just going to wet my brush and I'm going to pick up one of my pinks. This one, it looks a very rosy pink color. So I'm going to use, which one is this? Quinacridone Rose. And I'm going to apply the color right up against this petal here. The pink kind of fades away as it comes over to the left side. The color is actually the darkest right in that triangular shape right there. And then it goes down to a very, very soft pink. So I'm watering down my paint so that it's not as strong. There is a distinct shadow line here. It cuts right off. There's also a little bit of that gray shadow in there. I want to keep this light as well because it's not really dark. But there's some there. I'm just butting right up next to the pink color and it's going to run into the pink. Dot where I didn't want it, of course. There we go. We're just going to let that do its thing. We're not going to play with it, brush at it, or anything like that. Let the color mingle and do what it's going to do. Back in here, there's a little bit of this yellow coming from the center of the flower. So I'm going to pick up one of my darker yellows. And, oops, put that in. I got water here. Comes right between here and right along here. There's a little bit of it there too. Now I'm just going to rinse and soften the edge here. can't really work this petal now because I got too much wetness around it. If I were to try to go in there now and do what I want to do on this petal, it wouldn't work because the colors would run together. So I have to let these colors that I just put down dry before I can touch that petal. So let's come over into here. There is a very dark division here where it's almost red, but I'm going to start with pink, and then we'll build it a little bit darker. You're always, I think, better to start out a little bit lighter because you can always make something darker. But once you've piled a lot of dark paint in there and you think you want to lighten it up, that's not so easy to do with watercolor. So I try to tackle it a little bit timidly so that I have somewhat more control over it. It is pinky, just like this. It actually does run right into that yellow I just put down, but then it fades off drastically. There's intense pink there in the middle that really fades away and turns to a gray shadow. So I want to be sure I'm softening that off and not leaving a hard edge. Same thing over here. This petal right here on the end is just a very soft version of this pink. So I'm just wetting the petal with water and pulling some of what I just put down in there. This one too. This is mostly light, but there's some pink on the back edge of this petal. This petal is the Sunstruck one, so I need to be careful not to get my pink over into there because it's really almost white. Okay, and then this petal, I can't do anything more here again because it's wet. I have to wait for this to dry before I can go back and add more. Keep getting water on here. Okay, this petal here, it scoops up like this, and this edge of it is very, very light, but inside here it's extremely dark, especially underneath the yellow. So we're going to go with the same color. This is the quinacridone rose. And I want to place the color initially when I set my brush down where the color is the strongest. This pretty much is a hard edge because the petal is cupping up. There's one little spot that's softened off, but most of this is going to be a hard edge. right here in this corner. Just tickling the edge of this so that it fades off. This is almost ready to go back to, but not quite yet. Okay. I could come down into here and work some of this gray shadow so you can see that. Now this gray, it starts out purpley, a purpley gray right up in here. And then it goes into more of a warm gray down in here, which I've already got in there, like this. But this one is leaning more lavender-like. So I'm going to pick up some of my gray, and if it's not quite right, I just add a little bit more. Now if I want to make it warmer, I'm going to add more of the burnt orange, but in this case, because it's purpley, I want to add a little bit of my permanent magenta. That's this one. I'm going to come right up in here, right along the edge of that petal. And then as it comes down into here, it turns cooler. So I'm going to pick up blue. And there's a fold here that this goes right up against. I'm going to rinse and pull the edge of this out. Okay, then the other side of that fold comes right like this. Now I want to tickle this side and pull it this way so that I don't contaminate that fold with too much paint. I see it's already creeping over. I'm hoping it'll be okay. I could strengthen this shadow here. There's more of a rose color here. It's very strong up against these other petals and fades off to nothing. So this is what I was referring to as the layering process. This is dry. I did this before. I want to have this darker, so I'm just going to go on top of it. I'm going to use my quinacridone rose. coming right up against the edge of the other petal. And it kind of swoops to a point and looks like that. Rinse, soften the edge. Okay, where I started here now, I think is dry enough. I can go back. If you get too over anxious and come back into an area before it dries, and it's still a little bit damp, you risk creating what is called blooms. If you come in too late with wet color on top of really almost dry color, but not really dry color, the water will push the paint that you had put down before, and it can create pretty shapes if that's what you want, but it can also be ugly if you don't want it. So to tell if your paint is dry, feel with the back of your hand. If it feels cool at all, like it does right down here where I just put paint down, then you know it's not dry. If it's not cool, you're pretty safe to know that it's dry. So I know I can't come down in here right now, but I can come back up in here. Now this petal here has just a little bit of a pink edge to it, and then some blue-gray shadowing right along here. So let's put the blue-gray in first. I'm going to pick up just a slight bit of manganese blue with this, because it's a little bit almost like a sky blue color I can see there. I don't want to get carried away with it, but it's more blue than some of the rest of it. So I'm going to put that down first. And it looks a little bit streaky. Okay, rinse, soften, pull it back towards the back end of the petal. I don't want to soften too much here, just a little bit. Okay. Now there's a little bit of this rose color right along this edge. Tiny bit of it right there. And a minuscule amount right there. I'm going to rinse and soften. I missed something here. I think there was some more of that yellow center color. Okay, I can't do anything more to that petal now until it dries. So I hop around like this while I'm working. You know, I put down a layer of paint and then I move on to something, some other area that's not next to it, so I'm not going to mess it up with putting wet down next to it. Once it dries, I can come back and see what else I need to do to it, because the watercolor may dry, it probably will, dry lighter than it looks when you first put it down. So you do have to keep rechecking, is this dark enough? And if it's not, you apply more. And you just keep working in that method until you get what you want. Which is why I say sneak up on it, start light, build your colors, rather than coming in and plowing on very dark color that then you can't do much with. So it's a judgment call based on how dark do you want it, how vibrant do you want it, and has it dried down too much? Does it need to go darker? There are ways to lighten, but I think that you're much better off to sneak up on the color and gradually darken it as you go than it is to try to go back and make corrections and lighten. But there are, you can lift paint and whatnot, but I just prefer this method that I'm showing you right now. Okay. What needs to happen here? This still needs to go darker underneath here. There's quite a dark edge underneath this petal that's cupped out. These, it's going like this, turning over and casting a shadow underneath it onto the petal below. So I still need to go darker on that, and I'm going to use, what is this color? That's not coral. It might be like a, no, it's not rose madder. This one's leaning more to the red than it is to the pink. And I'm sorry, I didn't write down what it was. I can't tell you exactly for sure, but it's leaning more red than it is pink. Now I want to be careful not to cover up everything that I did here before, or, you know, if you do that, then there's no reason to keep layering, because you're just covering up what you did before. So I want to be more discreet and keep this in a smaller space when I apply it. The darker I go with the color, the smaller generally the space is going to be that I'm covering. Structure of the petal here, it is cupping, it's cupping up. Okay, I'm rinsing, and now I'm going to tickle the edge of that. So this edge actually got a little bit too much color on it. It should be lighter than what I have. So I'm forced to show you how to lift color. I'm going to try to do this delicately. I've got just a moist brush here, and I'm going to rub it on the spot that should have been left lighter. That alone lifts some paint. Now, if you want more, you can, while that's wet, take a paper towel and just push down, and that will also lift color. So that's a good way to do it. I see I skipped another spot here. I should have left it white. These two colors really should be blending together, not buttered right up next to each other. So I'm just tickling the edge to help blend a little bit and to help lighten a little bit. This petal here could use another layer of a purpley, a little bit of a purpley color. So I'm going to use just a little bit of the magenta, permanent magenta color. And I'm going to just come right on top of this layer. I'm going to go right into that pink I just put down, pinky red, and pull that on the left side of this petal because that is actually pinker right in that spot. You really have to observe your photograph well. There's so many different tones and shapes. Strong observational skills will help you a lot. Okay, I think I like that. Okay, that's dry. All right, so back to this petal here, we only have one layer on that, and it has to have a division line in here that's much redder. So I'm going over to this redder color again. Comes right under here like this. Comes right over here to this one. This is actually going to need to be darker yet. This is the brown madder color. I'm going to drop some of that in there. What's this one? This is, it's two different brands of rose madder, and they're quite different. This one is the Mission Rose Madder. This one's the Daniel Smith Rose Madder, which looks much browner. The Mission color is much pinky red, more pinky red. I'm going to drop some of that in here as well. Okay, now I'm going to rinse and soften. And there's some of this gray shadow color. Right along this edge. Very strong along this edge. Just a tad of it underneath there. Not going to put a lot of that down, just a little bit. Tickle up against the edge. I don't want to obliterate my light end. There's a ripple in this petal. So this part right here, where I'm picking up color, rises up like this. So that's why that needs to be lighter in the middle. But down here, it's tucking under. So that needs to be darker along that edge. With this light spot in the middle, which is where the ripple is. It may be hard to actually see that just yet until we get more work in around it. But it's like any other thing we paint. It's sort of like putting a puzzle together, shape by shape. That's what we're doing. We're painting shapes in here. I think for right now, that's basically what I wanted to show you. I'm not going to do all of this on camera or we would be here forever. But you're getting the idea that I'm layering the colors. I'm taking my time. I'm evaluating if the color is warmer, cooler, more in shadow, more in light. And taking my time, sneaking up on the darkness of the colors, rather than just plowing dark color in right from the start. So I'm going to continue working off camera and then I will be back. Thank you.